One of the most hyped showcases of Summer Game Fest 2025 was, without question, Resident Evil 9 Requiem. And folks, I got to see some gameplay. I was at Playdays, where media and press went to cover all of the games that were showcased there, and Capcom had this behind-the-scenes presentation where I got to see the game in action, and let me tell you, it's looking really freaking good so far. So the first thing that they emphasized is that Resident Evil 9 is a return to survival horror. It had more Resident Evil 7 vibes than it did 8, and with the main character, one of the things that they emphasized with Grace, who is the daughter of one of the characters from this game that not a lot of people know about, Resident Evil Outbreak. There's a character named Elisa Ashcroft. The daughter of that character is one of the protagonists of this game. They haven't officially said Leon is a protagonist, but there's rumors and speculation out there that that is indeed the case. But speculation aside, Grace in particular is supposed to be a character who's more about her deductive skills rather than someone who is trained in the art of combat. Not to say that there won't be any combat with her, but she's just clumsier because that's just, she's a bit of a rookie on that front, and her combat skills will evolve over time, and obviously you'll get access to a bigger arsenal of weapons as the game evolves. But generally, you're going to feel pretty helpless for a lot of Grace's gameplay. And so what I got to see was gameplay starting with Grace waking up upside down, tied to this contraption. And she had this needle going through one of her arms that was stuck to one of her veins that was extracting blood. She had to kind of unplug herself. She had to knock a glass over, shatter it, grab that glass, and cut some of the cords and all the straps that were keeping her down. And then she would rock side to side to make sure the contraption would tip and then fall sideways, and that allowed her to kind of get out. And as she looked around, she could see she was inside this fancy room with almost Victorian-esque decoration, which is very familiar for Resident Evil fans who have been playing these games in mansion settings. This had that vibe and aesthetic. And the gameplay immediately was first-person gameplay. Now, towards the end of the demo, the folks at Capcom decided to surprise us by kind of going back to kind of an old part of the gameplay, going to options and switching third-person mode on. So yes, you can play this game either in first-person or third-person. It's a nice option to have. They do recommend that you play in first person, but some folks just prefer third person, either because first person's too scary or because it's the perspective they prefer. Maybe they get less motion sickness, or they just prefer it for whatever reason. But most of the gameplay was done in first person, and so Grace here is kind of really scared. You can hear her breathing throughout the whole presentation. There's not a lot in the way of music. A lot of it is very atmospheric soundscapes, and you can just hear this deafening silence that just makes this whole situation even creepier. And so she's inside this room. She opens a door and kind of walks out into this PT-esque hallway, and that splits into multiple directions. On one side, you got this hallway that has these red lights, very ambiance driven, very creepy looking. On the other side, you got what looks to be some kind of a kitchen area. She turns on the light, and immediately a bottle rolls off, as if to imply that there's an entity beyond the darkness. So Grace immediately nopes out of there and goes to where the red light part of the hallway is, and she turns on another light to discover another part of this hallway where in front is this horse statue sticking out of the wall, and she's kind of walking around. Again, very atmospheric, very PT-esque in a lot of ways. And then she discovers this shutter, a barred door that won't allow her to go into the main area of the mansion, to the foyer or whatever. And so she's trying to press this button, but then she realizes that the fuse box is missing a fuse, so you need a second fuse to open this thing. So she has to go back, and as she's walking through the hallways, she sees that there are various numbered doors, and one of the doors was room 201, and inside 201 is this closet that had an empty bottle in it that seemingly will be used for later. And along the way, she also in that room picked up a lighter in the closet, and there's a fuse in the closet that's providing power for the lights in that room. She decides to take that fuse out, put that in her inventory, and use that obviously to open the shuttered doors. And as she's walking back to the shuttered doors, you can see the ambiance is really top notch. It really is terrifying, with lightning kind of peeking through the windows, and the windows themselves, you can see the curtains blowing a little bit and the light peeking through. The lighting engine really shines, and the way they establish the mood is really great, and you really feel that sense of like, oh, this is like true survival horror. They're really going back to those roots. Now, at one point in the demo, Grace goes back to that area, the kitchen area where like the bottle came out of, and she proceeds further into the darkness, and there's this door that she opens, and then this dead corpse kind of comes out, and there's this big like jump scare that happens, and there's just something off about that corpse. You can tell that it's got some kind of infection from like the color and the texture of its flesh. Out of the blue, as the corpse collapses and she's like catching her breath, you see this giant freaking hand come out from like the left side, grab the corpse, and as Grace looks up, there's this giant, like really tall, kind of hag-looking creature, like with this really dysmorphed kind of face and head. The head is bigger than it should be. It's like a more feminine looking disfigured monster wearing like a nightgown that just grabs this corpse and just rips its head off with its teeth and just chomps on its head, eats its head. And obviously Grace and the player who's playing this freaks out and starts running back, and they make their way through the hallways and just kind of close the doors behind them and head back into the room that they started out in. And they kind of catch their breath for a bit. The demo then like cuts to black and fades back into the kitchen area where now there's a lot of blood. This hag, giant creature, zombie thing has gone away. They're still lurking about somewhere, but it's no longer in that area. And there's all this blood from the head that the hag creature ate. But within this room, there is this like box. She can move that box around so she can climb up so that above one of the like cabinets, she can find this toolbox that she opens up to get this screwdriver, and then boom, out of the blue, this creature breaks through the wall and another chase begins, grabs the main character, bites her in the shoulder, and you can see like, you know, the screen having that, you know, you are damaged effect where, you know, the surroundings are faded and a little red. And so Grace uses this like HP injection that heals her. D-pad is used for items to, you know, quick use items. Grace goes back into this room she started in, but then like the lights go out inside that room and it gets real creepy. And then she tries to walk out and notices that there's now a hole in the ceiling in one of the hallways. So yeah, as this large hag creature moves around, you can see like the mansion itself evolving in terms of, you can see the damage that it's causing, and you can see all of the crevices where you don't know where it's going to come out of. And, you know, there was a second where I thought, well, it's definitely going to come out of that ceiling. But for now, it doesn't. So Grace goes back to that area with the shutter doors, manages to install the fuse that she got from the other room, and manages to open the door. And right when that happens, the giant creature, the hag creature, crawls out of the ceiling and starts chasing Grace. And that's kind of about where the demo ends. They kind of leave it all in this cliffhanger for players to find out more when they play the game or when they show us more down the line. And it was right after where they kind of faded back into a previous instance of the demo and showed us the options menu where you can, in fact, switch into third-person view. Past Resident Evil games that were first-person, people complained that they wish they had a third-person option. Those were added after the fact. With Resident Evil 9, the option to switch between the two will be there at launch from the outset. Though, in the options, it does say when you look at the first-person option in the camera options menu, it says first person is recommended. So that is the ideal experience if you want the biggest scares, but if you just like third-person Resident Evil gameplay, then that option is there. And that's kind of where the demo ended, and I wish I could, like, you know, just shoot and beam the images into your head, but all I can say is they really nailed the atmosphere. The whole theater was like, you know, at the edge of their seats with bated breath. You could hear all the reactions when all the big scary moments happened when the creature showed up. They actually teased this creature in the trailer that's been made public. The big creature with the teeth, that's her. And then you actually see this creature crawl out of the ceiling in the trailer as well for the briefest moment. That hallway and that creature was featured heavily in this presentation. And so yeah, with all said and done, I walked away from the Resident Evil 9 presentation more excited for this game than ever. Just about everyone that I spoke to had the exact same sentiments of, oh, they're cooking over here. Now, from rumors that I'm hearing or reports put out there by folks like Aesthetic Gamer or Dust Golem, who has done a lot of coverage and leaks in the past for horror games, including Resident Evil, they're saying that Grace is not the only playable character. Leon will be the main character of Resident Evil 9 Requiem. You will play more of Leon than Grace, apparently. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for this initial stage of Resident Evil 9's announcement, they're showing Grace and just showing the vibe of the game to hype people up. And then they're going to build further on that hype by revealing that Leon returns, Leon being a fan favorite. I think that's a great way to market this game while slowly kind of peeling back the layers of this survival horror experience onion. And so I look forward to hopefully Leon getting announced because that's my boy. He's my favorite character in Resident Evil, and him making a return, or rumors that he's making a return, certainly has me excited. But regardless, what I did get to see of the game already looks really freaking awesome. Obviously, I have to see more. I have to play the full game to really get a sense and idea for whether overall as a package, it's a good game and a good Resident Evil game. But so far, so great. Just about everyone had really positive reactions to this, and I did as well. I wanted to see more, and I'm sure we will in the not-so-distant future. But the glimpse that I got so far is already chef's kiss. And I look forward to talking more about this with you guys when they show more down the line. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to end my impressions of Resident Evil 9 Requiem from the behind-the-scenes closed doors presentation that I saw. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. But what do you think about Resident Evil 9 from the trailer, and what do you think about the game from the impressions that you're going to see from myself and many others who also saw the demo? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.